Morning, everybody. Corey Hughes, Bloody History. We're going to continue on with this John Armstrong file on Ruth Paine. Some interesting stuff so far. Not least of it being Ruth Paine's porno movies that she made on 8mm film. Little freak bitch. And for a Quaker, she never engaged in any Quaker activities except for State Department Quaker activities, which means that she's fucking CIA. Okay, fuck this bitch. All right, to Director FBI from SAC Dallas, FBI documents. Reference Lee Harvey Oswald. Internal Security, reference Cuba. Here above Lee Harvey Oswald's name, we have a circle between Harvey and Oswald. I don't know why. I always used to think that was an indication that there was a name missing. I don't know of any name that could be missing between Lee Harvey Oswald, right? So this is just another mystery. Why is there a circle above Oswald's name in the notations? This circle is very common. It's above Jack Valenti's name. It's above a bunch of people's names that I've seen whenever there's a name missing. But I don't know of a name missing here. Re-Bureau Airtel to Dallas, 9/8/64, enclosing copy of a letter from the President's Commission dated 9/3/64, requesting re-interviews with Ruth Paine, Marina Oswald, Marguerite Oswald, concerning whether they were ever customers in Hutch's Supermarket, 2333 West Shady Grove, Irving, Texas, during October or November 63. Enclosed were 10 copies of a letterhead memorandum containing the requested investigation, which was conducted by S.A. Wallace R. Heitman, with the exception of the physical determination of the approximate distance between the Paine residence and Hutch's Supermarket, which was determined by S.A. Richard J. Burnett. By letter dated September 3rd, 1964, the President's Commission on the Assassination of President Kennedy requested investigation to determine if Ruth Paine was ever a customer in Hutch's Supermarket, and to obtain from Mrs. Paine certain additional information concerning her knowledge of Lee Harvey Oswald. This letter also requested re-interviews of Marina Oswald and Marguerite Oswald along the same lines, and in particular, requested that a determination be made whether Marina Oswald, Marguerite Oswald, and Lee Harvey Oswald ever shopped together at Hutch's Supermarket on a Wednesday evening sometime during October-November 1963. Attached to the results of interviews conducted with Miss Ruth Paine, Mrs. Marguerite Oswald, and Marina Oswald containing the requested information. Also attached are results of physical check by special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation of the distance from the residence of Mrs. Ruth Paine to Hutch's Supermarket. 9/14/64. Ruth Paine, 2515 West 5th Street, was interviewed at her residence. She said she has resided in Irving for approximately 5 years, as she can best recall. She's only been in Hutch's Supermarket perhaps once or twice. She said she believes that the only time she ever went into Hutch's Supermarket was to buy some milk. She believes that it's possible Marina Oswald was with her on one occasion that she went into Hutch's, but she does not recall whether or not Marina actually went into the store with her or waited in the car. She said she could not remember the date she actually had gone into Hutch's. She said she believes the occasion on which Marina was with her when she went to Hutch's Supermarket was sometime in March or April 63. And Marina was visiting here for the day during the time that Oswalds were living on Neely Street in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas. She said she cannot recall another specific occasion when she was a customer at Hutch's Supermarket, but she has a vague recollection that she may have purchased ice at this store on one occasion. She said Lee Harvey Oswald's never been a customer of Hutch's Supermarket to her knowledge. She recalls that she passed by Hutch's Supermarket on the day she took Oswald to the Oak Cliff driver examination station because the route she took included West Shady Grove. She's sure that she did not stop at Hutch's Supermarket on that occasion. She said she can recall one occasion on which Marina fixed a lunch for Lee Harvey Oswald, which she took with him to work on Monday morning after she had spent a week at her house. She said there may have been other occasions, but she cannot specifically recall that they were, or what they were. She believed on occasion that she can recall in which Marina fixed a lunch for Oswald was in late October or early November 63. She said she never had seen Oswald drink large quantities of milk or any other liquid. She said she seemed to recall Oswald liked sweet rolls and would generally eat sweet rolls if Mrs. Paine had them with coffee on the Monday mornings following his weekends at the Paine house. 9/10/64. Mrs. Marguerite Oswald, 2220 Thomas Place, mother of Lee Harvey Oswald, advises she does not know if she will answer any questions that the President's Commission may ask, and she has tried repeatedly this past weekend to contact members of the Commission when they were in Dallas, and they refused to answer her telephone calls or return any calls she made to them. Mrs. Oswald said this upset her a great deal, and therefore she's very mad at the Commission. However, Mrs. Oswald stated for SA's Earl Haley and Robert D. Madlin to ask her any questions, and she would decide if she would answer the questions. Mrs. Oswald stated that she had not seen her son, Lee Harvey Oswald, for about 1 year prior to the assassination of John F. Kennedy until her son's arrest in Dallas, November 22nd. Mrs. Oswald stated further that she did not know anything about her son's activities or his life during the time he resided in Dallas or in Irving, Texas during the fall of '63, because she was not in contact with him during that period of time. Mrs. Oswald stated she does not know if her son took a bag of lunch with him to work that during that October or November of '63, but would assume that he did not because of the fact that she understood he was residing in a rooming house in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas and does not know if he had kitchen privileges. Mrs. Oswald stated further she was never with her son and his wife Marina at Hutch's Supermarket in October or November '63 and never shopped with them in Irving at any time. Mrs. Oswald said further to her knowledge her son never had a habit of eating cinnamon rolls with a large quantity of milk. Mrs. Oswald expressed a keen curiosity concerning the location of Hutch's Supermarket and stated that she believed she would conduct her own investigation and possibly contact Hutch's Supermarket because she felt that she could learn a great deal of information because she was the sorrowing mother and that people just tended to give more information to her than they would investigators. Mrs. Oswald said, "I'm a sorrowing mother, but still more, I am a very good investigator." 9/14/64. Marina Oswald was interviewed at her home, 629 Beltline Road. Present during this interview was Mr. Delkin Ford, who is Marina Oswald's advisor. You know something? What the fuck is going on with Marina Oswald's, residency status during this whole fucking time? How the fuck is immigration not up her ass every single fucking day? What is going on here? She was interviewed concerning whether or not she had ever been a customer of Hutch's Supermarket and concerning other questions requested by the President's Commission on the assassination. Marina said to her knowledge she'd never been in Hutch's Supermarket in Irving, Texas, nor had her late husband, Lee Harvey Oswald. She said she does not believe Lee Harvey Oswald ever had a check for $189 in his possession during the time they lived in the United States. She's no information indicating Oswald ever tried to cash a check for $189 at Hutch's Supermarket, 2333 West Shady Grove, Irving, Texas. She stated when she lived at Mrs. Paine's house, she generally traded at the A&P grocery store in Irving, and she went generally with Mrs. Paine. She said she could recall one occasion on which Oswald had attempted to cash a check, which was refused. She believed this occurred in New Orleans, Louisiana. She was with him on that occasion, but was in another part of the store when he tried to cash the check. She believed this was one of the $33 unemployment checks which Oswald received. She cannot be sure of the date. She is sure that Oswald did not try to cash this check at Hutch's Supermarket in Irving. She stated further she'd never stopped at Hutch's Supermarket on any Wednesday evening during October or November with Lee Harvey Oswald and mother Marguerite Oswald, as she had never been in Hutch's Supermarket, to her knowledge. Furthermore, she does not recall shopping together with Marguerite Oswald and Lee Harvey Oswald. She said she does not recall whether or not Oswald cashed a $33 check at the A&P store in Irving, Texas, or any other place on October 31st or November 1st, 1963. Concerning whether or not Lee Harvey Oswald took lunches to work on the Monday mornings following the weekends, which he spent at the Paines, Marina Oswald advised as follows. She stated she believed she had fixed lunch for Oswald on about 3 occasions. On these occasions, she fixed the lunch at night, put it in a paper bag, and then put the lunch in the icebox. She would usually fix a sandwich, perhaps of cheese, sometimes chicken, and also put fruit in the bag. She did not get up in the morning when Oswald left for work. She cannot recall the exact occasion on which she fixed these lunches. Concerning the question as to whether Oswald was in the habit of eating cinnamon rolls with large quantities of milk, Marina said that Oswald liked sweet rolls but did not ever drink much milk because it was expensive, and whatever milk the family had was mostly left for the children. If he drank milk, 1 glass was usually quantity taken. He did like milk, however, but never drank it in large quantities. To Marina's knowledge, she said when she was residing at the Paine's house and she did not fix Oswald's breakfast on Monday mornings, he was at the house and was not aware of what he had eaten. If, in fact, He'd eaten breakfast on these occasions. She said she believed, however, he would eat sweet rolls or toast with coffee. She said during the evening meals when Oswald was at the Paine's house, Marina would fix iced tea for him. September 14th, 64. On September 16th, 1964, S.A. Richard J. Burnett clocked the mileage from the house of Ruth Paine, 2515 West 5th Street, to Hutch's Food Mart, which is commonly referred to as Hutch's Supermarket, on Shady Grove, Irving, Texas, 0.8 miles. There are only two logical ways to walk the route between Mrs. Paine's residence and the grocery store, and they are as follows. One, from Mrs. Paine's residence to Westbrook Drive, south to 10th Street, southeast to 11th Street, east to South Story Road, and then south to the northeast corner of West Shady Grove Road and South Story Road, on which corner the grocery store is located. It takes approximately 13 minutes to walk this route at a normal man's pace. From Mrs. Paine's address, east to South Story Road and then south on Story Road to the northeast corner of West Shady Grove Road and South Story Road, takes approximately 14 minutes walking at a normal man's pace. All right, seems to end that series of documents. So there was a lot of concern over whether or not Oswald, Marina, and Margarita Oswald, an older woman, went into Hutch's. But come on, you already know what I'm going to say. Oswald's a ghost. Remember, we don't see Oswald till he shows up at the Texas Theater. So it's obviously Kerry Thornley that she's talking about. I'm telling you, Kerry Thornley was in Dallas setting him up. He was a shooter of Tippit. So, yeah, goddamn, I really would. It'd be nice if somebody else could figure that out too. All right, Airtel, Director FBI, 9/11/64 from Legat, Mexico. Subject Lee Harvey Oswald, again with a circle between Harvey and Oswald. Enclosures. Enclosed herewith are 13 copies of letterhead memorandum dated and captioned as above. Also enclosed is the Transporte del Norte bus line ticket for travel from Mexico. Okay, so Mexico, DF is Mexico City, in case you didn't know. Mexico City to Laredo, Texas, as is currently used by that company and was in use at the time of travel by Lee Harvey Oswald on 10/2/63, as well as a copy of a 1964 edition of Editorial Flecha, guide map of Mexico City, which appears to be identical with that recently furnished to the Bureau by Marina Oswald. References Bureau cable dated 8/31/64 and Mexico City dated 9/3/64. Confidential source abroad referred to the enclosed letterhead memorandum is, and that's rest is redacted. Classification. The enclosed letterhead memorandum is classified confidential to protect the Bureau's operations in Mexico. Lead, Mexico City office. At Mexico City, we will continue to follow vigorously the investigation outstanding in connection with this case and will report promptly the results thereof. No local dissemination is being made of the enclosed letterhead memorandum. 3 extra copies of this Airtel are being furnished to the Bureau together with copies of the enclosed letterhead memorandum for transmittal to Dallas, the Office of Origin to San Antonio, which has been conducting investigations relating to that reported in the enclosed letterhead memorandum. I got a bunch of handwritten notes, but I can't read them. They're all scribbled. So what was going on in Mexico City that they were looking into at this point in time? Well, obviously we know what happened in Mexico City, but seemingly there was something else that they were specifically looking into in September of 64. All right, next page. A conversation with Mrs. Paine that she had a Russian-born woman living with her, and she was assisting this woman in view of the fact she had recently had a new baby, and she, Mrs. Paine, was improving her Russian-speaking ability by having this Russian-speaking person in her house. Hang on a second. So Ruth Paine had 2 kids. Are those kids Michael Paine's kids? Do we know that? Who the fuck is the father of Mrs. Paine's kids? On October 31st, 1963, J.H. Kitching, Dallas County Sheriff, and Leon Powers, Irving, Texas Police Department, advised they had no record for Ruth Paine. On October 31st, 63, Mr. Ted Sherman, Security Officer, Bell Helicopter, Fort Worth, Texas, advised that Michael Paine was presently employed by that company as an engineer, and he holds a security clearance. Hang on a second. Why are we backdating this stuff? Why is this stuff dated prior to the assassination? Is what I want to know. We have October 31st, 63. Dallas County Sheriff and Leon Powers, Irving, Texas Police Department advised they have no record for Ruth Paine. What's the fuck? What is going on here? On October 31st, Mr. Ted Sherman, security officer, Bell Helicopter, Fort Worth, Texas, advised that Michael Paine was presently employed by that company as an engineer and he holds a security clearance. Okay, why are they investigating these people before the assassination? What the fuck is going on here? On November 1st, 1963, Mrs. Ruth Paine, Irving, Texas, was interviewed, at which time she advised that Marina Oswald, wife of Lee Harvey Oswald, was staying with her following the recent birth of her baby. Mrs. Paine furnished Oswald's place of employment as a Texas School Book Depository, 411 Elm Street, Dallas, Texas, where he was employed as a laborer. Mrs. Paine stated that she did not know where Oswald was residing in Dallas at this time, but that it was his plan soon as he had enough money to get an apartment for his family and take his wife and children to live with him. Mrs. Paine volunteered that she would be glad to furnish this address to the FBI as soon as she determined where the Oswalds were residing. On November 5th, 1963, Ms. Ruth Paine advised James Hosty and Gary Wilson that she had not been able to obtain the address of Lee Oswald in Dallas, but that she would furnish it to the FBI as soon as she was able to obtain it. Mrs. Paine advised Lee Oswald had visited his wife, Marina Oswald, on November 2nd and 3rd, 63 at Irving, Texas. So this is probably part of Hosty's investigation into Oswald prior to the assassination. Mrs. Paine then expressed the opinion that she considered Lee Oswald to be a very illogical person and recalled that he admitted to her being a Trotskyite communist. Interesting. You don't really see a lot of documents from before the assassination. Here we got another report, Sheriff's Office. Type of case, protective research. Status pending. Investigation made at Boston and Cambridge, Mass, 11/25 to 11/27/63. Investigation made by ASAC Edward F. Sweeney, Secret Service, and S.A. Andrew Deagle. Synopsis: Michael Paine and Ruth Paine formerly resided at Notion Island, Woods Hole, Massachusetts, during the summer season for the past 6 years. Michael attended Harvard College, 47 to 49, and was dropped because of low grades. No derogatory information. Father of Michael and George Lyman Paine Jr., an avowed Marxist. Somehow I doubt that. No Marxists are working for the CIA. Copy of 25th and 35th class report executed by George Lyman Paine Jr. attached. Mother of Michael, one Mrs. Arthur M. Young, Ruth Young, now in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Details of investigation, references made to telephone call of SAIC Robert Bouk, B-O-U-C-K, PRS, Washington, D.C., November 25th, 63, 12:40 p.m. to ASIC Sweeney, requesting background information of Michael Ralph and Ruth Paine, formerly of Naughton Island, Woods Hole, Massachusetts. On Monday, November 25th, 63, a day of national mourning as proclaimed by the president, information not available. Tuesday, November 26, 63, David Forbes, owner of the J.M. Forbes Company, Inc., was contacted. Mr. Forbes advised that his sister's son was Michael Paine, Michael Ralph Paine, that Michael Ralph Paine's father was George Lyman Paine of Holgate Square, Los Angeles, and that his mother, Ruth Forbes Paine, later remarried Giles W. Thomas, who she divorced and married Arthur Young. God, she got around. Probably a honeypot. Ruth Forbes Paine Young is the sister of David C. Forbes, and she presently resides in Philadelphia. Mrs. Forbes stated she attended the marriage ceremony of Ruth Paine to his nephew, Michael Ralph Paine, somewhere on the outskirts of Philadelphia approximately 6 years ago, and they were married in a Quaker ceremony, which is Ruth Hyde Paine's religion. He further stated, to the best of his knowledge, Ruth Hyde Paine now resides in Irving, Texas, a suburb of Dallas, with their 2 small children aged 2 and 4 years, that he regards Ruth Hyde Paine as a very kind and generous person, and that she is a clever individual, and that she is possibly on the verge of a separation from her husband, Michael Ralph Paine, and believes they are actually separated at this time. He places the blame of separation on his nephew, Michael Ralph Paine. He further states there has been a gradual separation for over a year that he knows about. David C. Forbes stated Michael Ralph Paine has a brother, Cameron F. Paine, who resides in Baltimore. He stated that Michael Ralph Paine is presently employed by Bell Aircraft in Texas, and that his stepfather, Arthur Young, is his guiding light at the Bell Aircraft Company because Young has a very high position with the company. He also stated that to the best of his knowledge, Michael Paine has always been interested in mechanical things and engineering, but that he could never seem to successfully conclude a project. David C. Forbes further stated he knew nothing derogatory about Michael Paine. He doubts if Michael Paine attends church of any denomination. He does not know his politics, and he never know whether or not he was a member of either major political party. He also stated that during the summer months, Paine and his wife Ruth usually came to Noshin Island at Woods Hole, Massachusetts, and remained there a few weeks each summer. Well, for the past 2 years, Paine has not appeared, and his wife and 2 children came along while Paine remained in Texas. He stated that he realized there was a family strain, but did not pry into the whys and wherefores. That during the first 2 weeks of August '63, Ruth Hyde Paine came to Noshin Island and remained there with the children for the 2-week period, residing with Mrs. Arthur Ruth Young, who had been home on the island. Okay, so Ruth Paine and her children went and stayed up there for 2 weeks in August. I'm trying to think if that's significant in any way. Remember, timelines are everything. Noshin Island is located about a half a mile off of Woods Hole on Cape Cod and is 9 miles in length. The island is owned by the Forbes estate and has been owned by this family for 100 years. At present, there are approximately 20 houses and 500... I can't read that. 500 something on the island. All inhabitants are members of the Forbes family, and very seldom, if ever, are any homes rented or leased to outsiders. David C. Forbes stated that he did not know Ruth Hyde Paine had any knowledge of the Russian language, and it is a surprise to him. He further stated he could not understand any connection between the Oswald family other than out of the kindness of her heart, and he reiterated that she was kind, generous individual and may have felt sorry for the Oswald family. However, she stated that he does not know that maybe his sister, Mrs. Ruth Young, would have some additional information concerning this than he had. On November 26, '63, Arthur Kennedy, registrar of Harvard University, was interviewed relative to Michael Paine. The records disclosed that he had been admitted to Harvard College on application from Horace Mann Lincoln School in May of '47, New York, that he had attended Harvard for 2 years, majoring in physics, and was separated as of September 30th, '49 because of his failure to meet minimum scholastic requirements. The records show his birth date to be June 25th, 28 at New York. Oh, so he's way older than Oswald. Way older, 35, almost 40. When the assassination, he was 35 when the assassination happened, so that can exclude him as being any of the Oswald duplicates. His home address is 35 East 75th Street, New York. His father's George Lyman Paine. His mother's Ruth Forbes Paine Thomas. She divorced George Lyman Paine in '34 and married Giles Thomas, who died and later remarried Arthur Young. On November 26, '63, the bicentennial report for the class of '51 were examined. Michael Ralph Paine had submitted the following information for this report. Aircraft research engineer, Irving, Texas, employed by Bell Helicopter, Fort Worth. Wife Ruth Hyde, whom he married on December 8th, '57, at Media, Pennsylvania, and child Sylvia, born November 17th, 1959. Also on November 26, '63, the class reports for the class of 1922, to which the father, George Lyman Paine, was a member, were examined at the Widener Library. Those reports are submitted directly to the class secretary by the alumna. The 25th year and 35th year reports are highly significant, and Xerox copies have been made and are attached here too. The father, George Lyman Paine Jr., was born in New York City on November 16th, 1901. His father was George Lyman Paine, Harvard class of 1896. His 1947 address was 629 Hudson Street, New York, and his address in 1957 was 2331 Hellgate Square, Los Angeles. He married Ruth Forbes on March 20th, 1926 at, looks like, Milton, Massachusetts. They were divorced in 34. And he married Frances Drake at New York, 1939. The children by his marriage to Ruth Forbes were Michael Ralph Paine, born June 25th, 28, and Cameron Forbes Paine, born May 3rd, 32. Copy of 25th class report of Michael Paine was mailed to SAIC Book on November 26, 63. On November 27, 63, Registrar Kennedy's office at Harvard University produced the personal file of Michael Paine, which disclosed that he had resided at Gary's Hall Harvard dormitory through 47 and 48, and at Claverley Hall from January 49 until he left the university. His roommate was Nathaniel Patterson Warman in 1947, whose address is 2825 Ridgeway in Dayton, Ohio. Paine was a non-resident member of Lowell House. His faculty advisors were Professor John H. Gardner and Dr. Goldstein, neither of whom are now at Harvard. Paine's marks at the end of his second included 3 Ds and 1 F, and he was discouraged from returning to Harvard because these final grades were below minimum set by faculty. He was advised to continue his education at a different institution. Paine's religion was noted to be Unitarian. The file disclosed nothing derogatory about Paine. He was noted as being shy and lazy. His only activities were the Glee Club, Bach Choral Group, and the Outing Club. No mention was made or indicated of his political activities or interest. Paine sent for 2 transcripts of his academic record in 1950, but there were no inquiries from any other college, nor did the file at Harvard contain any mention of further education. Mr. Kennedy stated that from experience he knew that further inquiries at the university would be fruitless, particularly insofar as obtaining any indication of Paine's political leanings or thoughts. He suggested that Paine's former roommate, Nathaniel Warman, could possibly assist in this regard. From the bicentennial reports of the class of 51, it was learned that Warman's address of 1961 was care of O'Shea Publishing Company in Ennisburg Falls, Vermont. This company will be contacted and Warman will be interviewed in the near future. So Michael Paine is a fucking dummy. He's a dummy. Okay? I think you can eliminate him from knowing anything about anything involving intelligence. Okay? All right. Appendix. I'm assuming from the previous documents. Let me see. It says Progressive Youth something committee. Can't read that word. On February 9th, 61, a source advised that the Progressive Youth Organization Committee, PYOC, was established at the National Socialist-Oriented Youth Conference held in Chicago, Illinois, December 30th, 1960 through January 1st, 61. This conference was a result of something leagued by the National Executive Committee, Communist Party, USA, calling for a youth conference to establish an organizing committee whose objective would be to set up National Socialist-oriented youth organization. The conference scheduled a convention to be held within a year to found a new National Socialist-oriented youth organization. Okay, they're talking about socialism, not National Socialism, obviously. The June 13th, 1960, I can't read that date, it looks like a 2. A second source advised it was reported to the meeting of the National Council of the PYOC, held New York, June 16th and 17th, 1962, that although it had been planned to form a Marxist-oriented youth organization by the fall of 62, it would not be possible to form such organization for the next few years. On May 7th, 63, a third source advised PYOC had its headquarters at 80 Clinton Street, New York. 11/24/63. Okay, so one thing I want to point out, you'll see we get a lot of mention to communist organizations surrounding all this stuff, and not even around Oswald. All this stuff surrounding George Lyman Paine, Michael Paine. We also have communist stuff all over the Jack Ruby file, right? Because there was another Jack Ruby who was a Polish communist in New Haven, Connecticut, right? So there's all these incidental connections to these communist organizations, but something about that just doesn't sit well with me. I don't know what. Mrs. Ruth Paine, telephone, blah, 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 advised she has known Lee Oswald and his wife Marina Oswald since February of 1963. She stated that she never exhibited any interest in nightclubs or in striptease joints, and recalled that on one occasion in September 1963, Ruth Paine was in New Orleans and she exhibited a curiosity about the striptease joints along Bourbon Street. She and Marina, with their children, toured Bourbon Street together, but Lee Oswald never had interest and stayed home and did the dishes. She examined a photograph of Jack Ruby and stated that she's never seen this individual in the company of Lee or Marina Oswald and has never heard either one of them mention his name. She advised Lee Oswald showed very little interest in drinking, and she does not believe he drinks at all, and thus she is of the opinion he would not be in a nightclub or beer joint. Next one, SAC Dallas, to Director FBI, 12/23/63. Have appropriate articles turned over by Mrs. Paine, which are described on pages 712 to 717 of REREP, been forwarded to laboratory for cryptographic handwriting and intended writing examinations. Note the handwriting described under section H on 715 of REREP. Possible that these entries were made by Oswald when he was in Mexico City. Question Marina Oswald concerning the silver bracelet found by Mrs. Paine. Ascertain how and when she acquired it, and if the bracelet was a gift from subject. Press her for details as to any representations he made concerning its origins. Note in this regard that if Oswald purchased the bracelet in Mexico, which appears likely, may have well mentioned this fact to his wife. Also ascertain if Oswald ever mentioned watching highlight games to Mrs. Oswald, and if she knows if he was in possession upon his return to Dallas in October 1963 of a phonograph record. Note, Mrs. Oswald has consistently denied any knowledge of husband's trip to Mexico in late September, early October 1963. Among Oswald's effects found by Mrs. Paine were a silver bracelet with the name Marina inscribed on the same and a slip of paper bearing a notation. Phone embassy, get bus tickets, watch highlight game, silver bracelet, and buy record. These notations appear in a small Spanish-English dictionary in which were also found postcards of various views of Mexico City. Oswald probably the bracelet to his wife when he returned from Mexican trip. If so, he may have mentioned the trip to her. Okay, so this is, oh man. Okay, so first off, we all know Oswald never went to Mexico City, so he obviously didn't buy a fucking bracelet in Mexico City with the name Marina on it. Kerry Thornley went to Mexico City. So if Kerry Thornley went to Mexico City and purchased the silver bracelet with the name Marina on it, what does that indicate? It indicates that Kerry Thornley might have had some sort of affection for Marina Oswald. And you know what pisses me off the most? Judith Berry Baker, who I believe is a complete fucking fraud. She made the statement that Kerry Thornley was in love with Marina. Okay? So I hate it when people that I fucking hate are right about things. My question is, how is she right about things? I might have to get a hold of her and figure out that question, because the rest of her shit's obviously bullshit. Oswald would never step foot in that book depository, yet she claims she called him there. Like, go fuck yourself, you liar. But this is interesting. This bracelet thing is interesting. All right, again, we have a document, picks up in the middle. Looks like a FBI internal document. Picks up mid-sentence. Says, advised there was now no one in this department who had been there in 1957, and she had no information regarding Ruth Hyde in the department. Miss Paris advised Vladimir Sajkovic, presently instructor at Mount Holyoke College, South Hadley, Massachusetts, was chairman of the Russian department in 1957. On December 16th, 1963, PHT1 advised, what the fuck is PH? T1 is an informant number, but I don't know what PH is. Advised S.A. William Betts, Edward Cronk, executive secretary of the Young Friends movement of the Philadelphia yearly meeting of the Religious Society of Friends, in Philadelphia, said that she had met Ruth Hyde Paine in Indiana in 1955, and she'd been raised in Columbus, Ohio. She said she and Kronk are both members of the Young Friends movement, which is an organization anxious to do something to aid the relaxation of East-West tensions. They are active in getting pen pals and encouraging personal contacts with people on both sides of the Iron Curtain. They also have formed small study groups to become conversant with Russian culture and folkways. According to Kronk, Ruth Hyde married Paine about 6 years ago and subsequently moved to Dallas. She can speak Russian but has never been to Russia, as far as Kronk knows. She said Lee Oswald and his wife got in touch with Paine through pen pal program of the Young Friends movement. He said Lee Oswald had never been to Philadelphia. Okay, this Young Friends movement seems like a total crock of bullshit. Kronk said that although he was personally acquainted with Ruth Paine, he did not know Oswald nor the situation in Dallas relative to the Oswald family and Mrs. Paine. Next document. Department of Justice, FBI. Report of John Weinberg, December 17th, 63. Title, Ruth Hyde Paine. Character, Internal Security. Synopsis, Ruth Paine, date of birth 9/3/32, New York City, attended summer sessions, 57. University of Pennsylvania, studied Russian. Confidential informant advised Ruth Paine, member of Young Friends movement of Philadelphia, who were interested in relaxing East-West tensions, and as a result got in contact with Lee Harvey Oswald family through pen pal activity. Details at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on December 16th, 63, Maud Tracy, Alumni Record Office, University of Pennsylvania, advised S.A. William Smits. Her records reflected that Ruth A. Hyde, 1308 Pine Street, Philadelphia. Parent William Hyde, Columbus, Ohio. Date of birth September 3rd, 32, New York. Attended the summer session of the University of Pennsylvania in 57. Her course was elementary Russian, a 6-week course with 6 credit hours. She received a mark of a grade B. A 6-week course with 6 credit hours? Are you fucking kidding? This is nonsense. On December 16th, 63, Maureen Paris, Secretary, Russian Language Department, University of Pennsylvania. Oh, and just conveniently cuts off there. All right. Next document. Teletype to Dallas, Lee Harvey Oswald. Display photos of Osborne Bowen to Mrs. Paine to determine if she knows him. At first opportunity, remember that's Howard Bowen, or Albert Osborne, right? AKA the CIA guy who was on the bus. Re-interview Marina Oswald, question her, reference notations in Mrs. Paine's calendar in light of foregoing observations. Note, in Mrs. Paine's calendar on the page for month 363 appears the entry October 23rd. Lee Harvey Oswald purchases a rifle. We're checking for an explanation of entry. Of most significance is the 10/23/63 date for this suggestion. Suggests entry may have been made on that date. Osborne Bowen has been evading interview and his whereabouts not known. He's been soliciting funds for a mission in Mexico. And as Mrs. Paine had been active in religious circles, she may know him. If so, this could be of significance, for Osborne went into Mexico with Oswald, left from some of the same point of departure as Oswald, 10/2/63, one day earlier than Oswald, and proceeded on New Orleans, Oswald's starting point on Mexico trip. All right, so it says here in Mrs. Paine's calendar on the page for month of 363, March of 63, that's when he allegedly bought the rifle, appears the entry October 23rd, Lee Harvey Oswald purchase of rifle. God, Ruth Paine is so full of shit. She said she never knew he had a rifle. But then there was an entrance that she made after the assassination, October 23rd. But that's before the assassination. But she says she made the notation afterward. None of that makes any sense. What was going on October 23rd? Not a whole lot that I can tell. All right. Next page. 2664. Urgent teletype. Lee Harvey Oswald, Internal Security. Restricted. Cuba. Re-telephone call from W.A. Brannigan, February 5 last, entry in Mrs. Paine's calendar. Entry in question suggests possibility was entered by Mrs. Paine, October 23 last, which, if true, would establish that Mrs. Paine was aware of Oswald's possession of rifle before assassination, which she has to date denied. Note that October 23 was 3 days after birth of Marina's second child, and 1 day after she returned with the infant to the Paine house. It's not conceivable that Marina may have, in October 23, confided in Mrs. Paine that her past experiences with Oswald. If this is the case, it is possible Marina may have related to Mrs. Paine facts re Walker incident. Your interview of Mrs. Paine should thoroughly explore this possibility. Point out to her that the commission will surely seek truthful explanation of entries in question. Page 3 of your November 30 last report. This case states that, according to Mrs. Paine, Marina visited her at her... Oh, great, and it just cuts off again. I love how fucking... Man, Armstrong, what the fuck, dude? You can't put a whole document in here? So this is a big problem. She indicates she didn't know about the rifle, but then she indicates she knew about the rifle on October 23rd, but it was marked on the March date of the calendar, right? Like, so fucked up. How would she know the date that he ordered the fucking rifle? All right, next page appears to be a letter to Life magazine, editor-in-chief. Oh, God, half of this letter is not even readable. I'm going to try to make it through, but a lot of it is not legible. And I can't even tell who it's from. I'm assuming this is going to be from Marguerite Oswald. All right, let's see. Sir, your recent additional... I can't read that word. Regarding the reappointment of J. Edgar Hoover aroused... God, I can't read this. This is all kinds of faded. Something for not believing in his infallibility and his corpse and quote. I'm sorry, I got to skip this. I can't even read any of it. This thing is all smudged. If someone can go in here, page 123 of John Armstrong's fucking file and interpret this, that'd be great. This is a perfect candidate for like AI to like fix. All right, that's like 3 pages, probably all kinds of good stuff that I can't fucking read. So, all right, translation from Russian. Photograph of a 2-page letter, 5/16/63. Dear Marina, home once more and everything as usual. Floor has to be scrubbed, dishes to be washed, laundry to be done. Particularly boring after our visit, which was interesting and unusual. True, life is busy now, but not as interesting as it was with you. Today I carried on war against a beetle, cockroach. I think that I will win it. Tomorrow I'm going to prepare new soup and salad in order to find out if they will be good enough for guests on Saturday. I have to explain that I know little about cooking for more than 4. We shall see how it will come out. Michael did not call me to ask about the way. I finally called him at work. He's never at home in the apartment. I'm angry with him today and intended to leave for New York at once to find me a lover. All he loves are his machines. Please give regards to Lee and write me soon about diapers, beetles, and other such domestic subjects. That's from Ruth Paine. All right, here's another letter translated from Russian. Photograph of a 2-page letter. Dear Marina, oh God, I made a mistake. Michael explained to me that deduction, $600 per person, should be taken out of the earnings, not out of the tax. When the earnings are smaller, the state wants less taxes, but not $1,800 less, as I wrote. It is best not to write letters at 2 a.m., but it seems that Michael would pay $450 less every year if he had 3 more people dependent on his salary. No, we are not as rich as I thought, but we can arrange it this way if you wish to live with me with your children. We would pay you $10 a week. Out of this, you could buy what you wish, clothes, stamps, etc., but not food. I will buy this and also pay for the doctor medicines, etc. You do not understand how useful and pleasant it would be for me to live with you. I want to learn Russian very much, but how can I? It's very difficult to study at home with children, and I have a little practice. Well, she's writing this in fucking Russian. And she only took a 6-week course? Give me a break. Something's up here. We do not have to live and eat like rich people. We can simply live, but wholesomely. I would consider that it would cost me little to buy groceries, food, soap, etc., and pay for the doctor and hospital in return for acquiring the knowledge of the Russian language and to get help with my mistakes in speech and letters. Calcium tablets are for you, of course. I found out that when a person eats yeast all day, he needs more calcium. You particularly need more calcium now. 9 tablets a day, please, with milk if you can. Of course, you need more milk, at least 1 quart a day. Better 2. Forgive me for this extra advice. I am anxious to hear news from you. It's from Ruth. All right, translation from Russian, another letter. Photograph of 4-page letter dated July 21st. Dear Marina, I was very happy to receive your nice letter. I was also glad that you went to a doctor and your condition is normal. You told me once that June was born 2 weeks prematurely, did you not? You're probably right. Baby's birth will probably be about October 8th. I'm now going to leave from here Saturday, July 27th. We will go to the ocean. I hope that in 5 days we shall be at my mother-in-law's at Notion Island. This island is not too far from Boston. We shall be there from July 31st to August 11th, I think. My address there is, and she provides the address. Then we will go to Paoli, a small town near Philadelphia. This address there until 10th of September will be, and she gives an address. From there on to Columbus, Ohio, where live my mama and father. By the way, I do not believe I wrote you that my father did not get married in June. The woman changed her mind. Father, of course, was very hurt. This would offend my father very much. When he visited me in June, it was already decided that there would be no wedding. My brother and his family live not far from Columbus. We will visit there for a few days and then leave for home about the 17th. This is July and August. I'm always thinking timelines. What else was going on at that time? What if we come to visit you in New Orleans then? We may come on the evening of the 18th and spend a day or two with you. Then you may tell me if you wish to come stay with me for the baby's birth. Of course, I wish very much that you would. I would be very glad to have your company at home and would be glad to look after June while you are in the hospital and afterwards while you would be still weak from your confinement. It would be nice for her, June, here with children in the yard. Our home is used to children. If you wish to come stay with me, then we can leave together for Dallas on October 20th or thereabouts. But perhaps Lee would not let you go. He may feel lonesome without his wife and children. It is also true that a hospital here costs more, as you wrote in your letter. Before, I was looking for a hospital where it would cost less, but we do not have any like that here. Everything, including a doctor and hospital here, would cost $225. I'm very sorry, but we may talk about this personally, may we not? Please address me by thou when writing to me. Do they say it this way? Try it. This is from the verb to try, is it not? It would not be as hard for you to do in Russian as it is for me. Tell me, please, is it correct to write thou with a capital in letters as you do you? I wrote to Ruth Klopfer about you. She is a secretary for the New Orleans Quaker Church, genitive of church feminine. I asked her if she knows any Russians in New Orleans. I also wrote to Paul Blanchard, secretary of the Unitarian Church in New Orleans. I also asked her if she knows any Russians there. Perhaps one or two others would be able to find a Russian friend for you. Write without fail. Regards to Lee from me. Please kiss June. Sincerely, Ruth. Translator's note. The sender writes a fairly good Russian, but she's not sure of her grammar, hence her questions regarding various word forms. She also gives in parentheses pronunciations of American proper. And mentioned in the letter, she requests Marina to address her in letters with familiar pronoun thou, thou, as is the Russian custom among close friends. The writer herself uses thou, thou, in addressing Marina. In a more formal letter, when using pronoun you, Russians spell it with a capital letter. That is why the writer asks if she should spell thou with a capital, which is not done as a rule. All right, translation from Russian. Photograph of a 3-page letter in envelope addressed to Marina Oswald. Dated August 25th, 63. Care of Arthur Young in Paoli, Pennsylvania. So she's writing from Pennsylvania. Dear Marina, thank you very much for your letter, which I received a week ago. I was very sorry to learn that Lee is not working. It is hard for him and for you in the meanwhile. I hope that he will begin working again soon. Perhaps he already has. It is too bad you're not in Dallas yet. I found out that you may go to the Parkland Hospital there in Dallas and receive everything necessary and pay only according to your earnings. These unable to pay do not have to. But in order to get this aid, you have to live in Texas for 1 year and in Dallas County for 6 months. Lee told me that he learned a little from his uncle how to drive a car. It would be very useful for him to know how to drive, but it is hard to find time for him when he works every day. Tomorrow, we and the children will go to Baltimore, Maryland, where Michael's brother and his wife live. We will spend 1 day there, and then we will go further to Washington, where we will stay with sister until Thursday. Then back to Paoli again, where we will wait for my father. He will be here with us for 2 days. I expect to be in Paoli until September 10th, and then go to Ohio and Indiana, where our relatives and friends live, and to something in New Orleans on the 20th, in daytime if I can make it. Otherwise, in the evening. I hope you'll be able to understand this letter. My mistakes are terrible. Please write to me here one more time. I shall be glad to hear news from you and will be particularly glad to see you, Lee, and June in September. All the best, sincerely. So she's wanting to learn more Russian, but she knows well enough to know to use words like particularly in Russian? Yeah, fuck you. All right, this will be the last letter we read, and then we'll call it for today. Translation from Russian. Dear Marina, I would like to know as to where you decided to live. Perhaps we will see each other in New York, Washington, or Philadelphia. It seems that the article will not appear in the Look magazine. People here decided that newspapers wrote enough already about it. That's all right. My mother-in-law prefers me not to write such an article. She's glad that there will be no article, and I personally don't care. I wish you everything of the best. New life, later some nice work, i.e. when the youngsters will grow older. Kiss June and Rachel. I love you. All right. All right, and that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. We'll pick up here tomorrow. We will start off with some stuff on Michael Paine. All right, guys, that's it. Tune in later for Bloody History World War II. I know I didn't have one yesterday, but I'll have one out today. And then tonight we're doing Showtime with the Cube, if you want to tune into that too. So, all right, guys, thanks a lot. I'll see you guys tomorrow.